Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our monthly live chat with insights from the IMD MBA program in Lausanne, Switzerland. Today, I'm joined by MBA Program Dean Seán Meehan. Hello, Seán.
Hi.
Thank you so much for being here this afternoon.
Welcome. Great opportunity.
This is our second time that you're on the live chat with the same theme. Don't know if you remember, we had the same live chat back in April, when everything was all a bit new, and we'd been in lockdown for about a month, and we talked about how COVID had affected the program, the changes that we brought in. So a lot has happened since. Can we start perhaps with you updating us of what has happened since April in the program? How have we adapted to what has come at us?
Yeah, thanks a lot, Marcella. So I guess the place to start is let me just remind where we were then. We had experienced a slow realization across the rest of the world that COVID was going to be a reality for us as well. It had started in China, been first experienced in China, and there was an awful lot of noise and panic around that. We have a lot of Chinese students, and we have a lot of Italian students actually. So Italy was the first place in Europe to experience these events, and actually the place in Italy, which was the epicenter, is pretty close to us actually, Bergamo. There was a rising consciousness about this, and so telling people really you need to think about hand washing and all of this stuff, wearing a mask, this became less necessary, but we kept doing it. We kept reminding people what to do and reinforcing the WHO guidelines. We were able to get Module 1, with the exception of 8 classes, delivered face-to-face. So Module 1 takes us into the beginning of March. On the 18th of March was our last class. We then reshuffled the deck for the coming module. We took an Easter break, which we normally don't take, actually. We allowed 1 week for revision, normally about 3 or 4 days, and we had exams over a slightly longer period of time. That created a 3-week pause, if you like, in delivering our program, which allowed for the people who were going to teach next to think about, how do we do this? So that kicked off in April. From April through the 8th of June, the first day that we were allowed to bring people back to campus, we brought them back. And the MBAs were the first class back. So our priority was to get the MBAs up and running again. During that period, we had Zoom classes, so folks had to take their program via Zoom from their apartments. Most of them stayed in the country, a wise move, and our infection rates went down from March through to, I would say, you could see at May, very, very low. So 20 or 10 per day. During that period of time, we learned a lot about online learning, which isn't part of our design. This is a face-to-face program, and it continues to be a face-to-face program. What we have learned, though, is you cannot take the same stuff in the same way and just stick a camera in front of somebody and expect it to have the same impact. Now, that's not a huge learning in the sense that should be darned obvious, but when you've been sprung into this situation so quickly, I think that some people forget that and they go with what they've got. So there was a lot of adaptation. We threw tons of resources, IT, and I would say a teaching assistant type resource, to make sure that the faculty knew from one half day to the next half day what had gone on, where the class was psychologically, as far as we could tell, what the engagement levels were, what was working, what wasn't working, to try to make the next session better. And I think we just did this continuous improvement gig all the way through And we were hugely relieved to bring everybody back. Now, when we brought people back, of course, it was a whole different game, because we had to have social distancing. We had to have temperature controls. We had to have controls on different buildings. So, it wasn't, the whole campus wasn't as open as it would normally be. But man, I can tell you, people were so happy to get back. It was just a big relief. And you remember it well, Marcella. It was like the first day.
Yeah.
It really was.
Indeed.
If you ask MBAs, and I know this because I have, what's your big memory for the year? They'll say the 8th of June. Coming back after the 8th of June. That was a heck of an experience for them. So from the 8th of June, we had a 2-classroom solution. We had plexiglass all over the place. We had, people in individual booths, essentially. Pickup mics on the ceilings, cameras all over the place, and somehow the IT team and the multimedia team figured this out. Now, what I had told the professors was, we need to make sure that there's an even distribution of face-to-face between one classroom and another. And with what we did, what my plan was, you will do a normal session of 4 hours face-to-face in classroom A. We call it the L'Orange Auditorium. And the next time you teach your subject, you will go to classroom B, Kasani. And to me, that just seemed a logical and straightforward way, and teaching wouldn't have to change that much. And the professors basically said, no, it works up to a point, but I feel there would be much better engagement if I were in both rooms. I said, well, you can't be in both rooms. That doesn't work. And they said, I don't know about that. Maybe I can. So what they decided was to reduce the length of their sessions to 2 hours. And they did that by just basically getting rid of breaks and exercises. So basically voting with their feet, the majority of them went to a 2-hour and 2-hour solution. So in the same 4-hour period, the class would get the face-to-face experience with the professor. And in fact, have it twice if they wanted. They could also go and they could tune into the session via Zoom if they wanted to. So they were getting what they really need. So we boiled it down to what do they absolutely need, and make sure that that is delivered. And actually, the students were very, very responsive to that, and it was their preferred mode of delivery.
And you could still do Zoom? I mean, that was also a possibility if somebody needed to stay home or whatever. Yeah. That was always an option.
Yeah. Well, we had to confront the reality that at any point somebody could get sick and they could be at home, or they could be diagnosed as COVID contagious, but they might be asymptomatic at the same time.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So they're perfectly fine, but they can't come on campus.
Right.
We didn't want to deprive them of the opportunity to have their education. So we continued with Zoom in case we needed it. We had one student who was in Kenya. We had another student who was in
South Africa, I think.
South Africa. Thank you. Yeah. And they were just, it just took them a while to arrange travel on these repatriation flights, they are regular, but they're expensive and darned uncomfortable, and they go via 100 places, and you take a lot of risks to take them. So you ideally want to avoid that scenario. So anyway, that's what we did all the way through June. And part of our strategy originally, and to this day, was to move all of the experiential stuff that would have happened during Module 2 out. So we will have it some other time. And we were able to do that, and we moved things in instead. We offered extra sessions. We actually offered extra counseling. We did a lot of stuff to support the students at that point. In the end, we were not able to have our discovery expedition. The virus chased us all over the world. We changed locations. We shortened it. We did so many things.
How many versions of the discovery expedition we have? Because I remember for the schedule we had something outrageous like 15. How many?
18 versions of the schedule, of the year schedule, and And we are now on the 18th version, and we had 4 of the Discovery Expedition. Literally, we had issued the order to the agency to issue the tickets at 8 o'clock on one night, and before noon the next day, Berlin had basically instituted various rules that meant we couldn't go there. The end of the Discovery Expedition.
So what did we do instead?
So the Discovery Expedition, as moved, was the first week of it. It followed the career break. So there's what we call career break's a really bad word for it. It's my word, so I don't even know what we call it officially. But it's the period of time where people do lots of job interviews. They apply for lots of jobs. They do screenings. They do tests, all to do with getting a job. So all the stuff that you've had up until then during the year, you focus on. Now it's time to get a job, and that's a really important moment in the program for everyone.
And I think there was a lot of, sorry to interrupt, I think there was a lot of positive feedback about that, because often it's the sort of thing that you put at the end of the to-do list and then you leave it for later, whereas now actually they had some dedicated time to really dive in. Yeah,
but they always have that. I mean, that's part of our program. It's just that it had to move as well, because we knew that companies, if we would push it a little bit later, companies would be more likely to have confidence in where we were at. They'd be more used to it. And the companies were going to do and did their interviews virtually. So it's one thing to say to our participants, you've got to train to do these interviews virtually. You've got to make an impact virtually. You've got to create an impression. Yeah. But on the other side of it, on the supply side, the companies have to figure out how to do these interviews. And if you do them at the very beginning, they could botch these interviews from their side. You might be the victim of that. So actually, if you push it a little bit later, even if you push it a week or 2 weeks later, you're buying valuable time, and they have more experience. You have more preparation, and that's a good thing. The original question was, when did the Discovery Expedition, well, what do we do instead of it? It was designed to follow the career break, the career weeks, which is normally 2 weeks. So we made that 3 weeks.
Right.
And then we had a further week, which was what we call a perspectives week, where we brought in professors that they wouldn't normally hear about, talking about topics they would not normally hear about, and didn't make any pretense that these are connected. These weren't connected. These are standalone things that are interesting. And we ensured that every class had those. We had, each of the 2 classes had those, and in addition we had a bunch of guest speakers from CEOs to CXOs in various positions, from digitalization transformation and so on. I thought it was pretty good. The vibe was pretty good during the week. I think, participants probably on balance would prefer to have another week job searching. But, I keep reminding them, there is this little matter of earning an MBA. You just don't come here to do a job search. We're not a placement company. You have to earn your stripes, earn your MBA to join the ranks of the people who already have it. So, we had to impose that a little bit. So that was fine. That's what we did instead.
Yeah, and we'd also we put the electives earlier, much earlier than they would have had them in normal time.
Right. Actually, the electives, I was looking at the feedback from the electives yesterday and today, and I haven't seen such positive feedback for the electives ever. They were ready for those, and they went really well. So those electives are fun at IMD because partners can join in, and
I've heard a lot of positive feedback from partners as well. Very grateful that they were able to join and really be part of IMD from the inside.
And you choose which ones you want. So there tends to be a self-selected group, a group that I want to know about this thing, I don't want to know about that thing. and therefore you have people with common interests, which for a lot of the MBA program isn't true, right? You have, you know, I don't ever want to be an accountant, I don't want to touch the numbers, but I still have to do it. So here I am reluctantly. And then you've got the guys who are already experts and can't figure out why they're there, but they still have to do it. And it's just a more level playing pitch when you get to the electives. And that's a lot of fun.
Okay. And what actually hasn't changed or hasn't changed much in terms of timings are the ICPs, the international consulting projects, where they're at now. Can you shed a little bit of light? Have there been any changes there? Any adaptations there?
Not really, actually. I mean, we have 18, I think it's 18, could be 19 clients this year. Some are not-for-profits, like 2 or 3 social enterprises. There's some very big multinationals, as always, and that's, I would say, probably a bit more than a third. And the rest are very well-established Mittelstand companies. So, you know, really significant companies, but you probably haven't heard of them. I think that's a fair characterization. All going pretty well. As always, the biggest brands are the least satisfactory. So there's this really interesting honeypot thing that happens every year. You present a list of ICPs, of consulting projects. You have a 2 or 3 line description. You tell the students those projects will change. That scope is what the client thinks right now. And by the time you get around to doing it, they'll have other priorities. But that's the direction that they're thinking in right now. And in truth, probably 2/3 of them stay on track, more or less. The clients, that is, stay on track, and then a third kind of shift around a little bit more. So I'm always very careful to tell the MBAs, you don't bank on that being the actual project, but it'll be something like that.
Yeah. And in terms of, sorry.
Yeah. The students often get drawn to big names. The bigger the brand, the better. I have seen these in very, very large companies. Sometimes you get lost in the hierarchy. You get very little meaningful visibility. And I see it again this year. And there's one client this year, which is just a global mega name. And I would say it's probably one of them. It's a very challenging project. But it's the one where there's least engagement, and I kind of that's disappointing. So what's changed is that they can't travel with some exceptions. So we have a team right now in Denmark, which is fine, except when they come back, they'll have to quarantine for 10 days. Now, it doesn't remotely affect their job search. What I've had to deal with every other year is students complaining that, hey, I'm in Abu Dhabi, but I've got an interview in London. Who's going to pay for the ticket for me to get to London? Well, guess what? You don't have to go to London. You just get in front of the camera.
Yeah.
And, it doesn't matter where you are. So that is actually, I think, given the priority we're putting on the job search this year, I think it's a good thing that people are here, supporting one another, being available to us, and we're available to them. But it is true that it's just not possible to do the kind of travel we normally do. I would say I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, but it's a huge number of days that the students spend overseas on these ICPs. Yeah,
we had didn't we have last year a project where they were in Bangladesh for a good part of the what is it? It was 8 weeks, I think, that they were. So yeah, it was a big time. It was almost the whole ICP period that they were there. So absolutely.
It's been embedded in Bangladesh for the full period of time. We've had one in Morocco and one in Abu Dhabi.
Yeah.
Full time.
Yeah. So they're soon coming to an end in a couple of weeks, but I think some of their presentations have already started. And that's going, and then basically it's the wrap up, right? The year is almost gone, despite all the challenges, despite all the ups and downs and the changes. It's like every year it just ends up too soon. We're in December and it's the end. So is there anything next coming up that has been moved to later? We're still gonna, because the electives are not gonna be there. So is there anything, or we're just gonna slide into the end?
Slide.
Yeah, I'm trying to be graceful, Seán.
You could have said glide. I think we like to think that people run through the finish line, and we hope that they will. And the finish line this year is the 4th of December.
Yeah.
Now, we have two events. Right now, the program is in ICP. That means that every team is working in a group of 4 or 5 people. Each team is deciding on its own with their with their project director, a faculty member. Do they work from home? Do they work here? I'd say about half of them are working here. And that's fine. It doesn't affect the work. We're all learning to work virtually. And, virtual teams is something that's pretty hard to teach, but I can tell you the class of 2020 is pretty darned expert with this. We had to move one thing to make room for something else. So there's a lot of shuffling, and that's the international module, so international course. So Omar Toulon will teach that course, and that comes up in about 2 weeks, and it's for 1 week.
Okay.
So far that'll be held here. Not 100% sure yet because the rules have changed. They've changed again last night. We have to look at what those rules mean and what they mean for us, but I'm pretty sure that they are they're okay. And so we need to look at those, and our lawyers are looking at those at the moment. Okay. So that's one week of class, and then there's a few classes in the very last week, but not many. Okay. 3 classes. Most of the last week, the week of graduation, is made up with moving out of your apartment, saying goodbye to your friends, welcoming your guests. And this year you won't be welcoming your guests, but you will still have to sort out your apartment and so on. And that's not, you need time for that. And then you need to get back to wherever you want to be at Christmas. So obviously you're not going to go back at the last minute this year because you have quarantine arrangements all over the world, and you need to respect those. So I think it's probably a good thing that we're finishing a little bit early this year, the 4th of December. Graduation itself, again, will be subject to the rules that we face. There's a question on that, so maybe I can address that a little bit. Should I? Is that okay, Michelle?
Yeah, I think so. You mean how to check the question?
The government communications.
Yeah, exactly. The one that's on everybody's lips. And since we're on it, you might as well address it now before we go into next year. Yeah.
Well, I think it is. I think it is including next year. So, Simone, thank you for your question. We are not a Nautico, and how exactly the canton expects us to behave, given the regulation, remains to be seen. So we are currently, and I'm hoping that by tonight I'll hear back whether we need to be off campus or on campus right now. So as of tonight, there's a new regime for universities. Everything has to be virtual. Well, not a university. So, what's their expectation? In the past, we have made the case when it has suited us, and it's not just an assertion. We actually go and talk to the regulators and say, for this purpose, what are you expecting? Just to put this in context for Simone and everyone else, the canton health authorities have recognized IMD for its handling of the COVID situation, for its response to incidents, for the safeguards it has put in place. It is one of the places of best practice that other companies are told to learn from. That's good. you know, and we are very, very strict. You know, but we're not asking anything unreasonable. So I say strict, but you know, it's what we all have to do. We have to wear masks. We have to, and so all of these things among the things that the canton is insisting on, we wear masks all the time. Well, we had that. We've had that for months. And I wish lots of other places had it too, but they didn't. So now we have the situation we have. So we will, our plan is to have a face-to-face program. If the canton says you're online, we will be online. If the medical officer says we're online, we will be online. It's given what has happened in the past, the nature of those discussions and the similarity with this situation, I believe we will not be pushed online tonight. But you know, this is for lawyers, and we will deal with it as we can. What we know for sure is we'll get people back as soon as possible. With regards to the MBA 2021, we are preparing for an in-person program. We have our schedule already planned, schedule number 1, which of course will probably change. And we think that it will, and we need then already our plan B. And, you know, and that's what we didn't have in March. That's what we didn't have in February going into March. We just weren't expecting what happened. Mm-hmm. And like everybody else, we got caught out and we were responding. Now we can do this much more sensibly, and we are more prepared. So every professor has basically 2 plans, and they can change in advance, or they can change in flight, during flight, if you like. What does this mean for the students? We will stick by our promise to provide the best experience possible under whatever circumstances we are faced with. We did that this year. I believe we're one of the only schools that did, because I think other schools had options at different times and they didn't take them. And that is perplexing and disappointing. We always prioritize face-to-face, bring the students on campus. When we were not able to, we didn't, and it was the shortest time possible. And we supported the students heavily during that period. That's what will happen in 2021. And Simone, if there's something else you want me to address, please say so. Please put in another question. But I think I'm covering what you're asking. Mm-hmm. So in summary, just to make sure everybody understands, the government, in light of very high infection rates here in Switzerland, alarmingly high, frankly, we've had to put in place a number of new measures. Now, my view on this is our society and our community, our citizens, have been incredibly responsive and responsible when the whistle blows. I mean, you know, we do what is asked of us to protect everyone. And I believe that will happen again. And I believe it happens all the time. The infection rates currently, and I stress, we read the newspapers like you do, and the websites like you do. So our information is pretty much the same. The people who make these decisions have much more information than we do, of course. And what I understand from that community is that the infection rates today, although they appear really high, and for us they are huge. I mean, you know, we don't like the way things are, and it moderates social behavior for sure. What they're saying is that these infection rates are pretty much what we had in March. It's just that we weren't testing in March. We didn't know we had this level of infection rates in March. So the real infection rate in the community is much higher. That's probably higher than we're seeing in the current infection rates. At the current rate of testing, about a third of folks are either positive or have had it in the past. And that's probably the same all over Europe. Now, I'm coming back to what does this mean for 2021? What we know is what we understand is this is a wave, not a wall, not a block. So it will ebb and flow. And this wave will come under control. Significant steps have been taken by the Federation. More steps may be taken by the canton, and we'll find out on Friday. Mm-hmm. But significant steps have already been taken. And you would expect a response. And if there isn't a response, more steps will be taken. But that is now. We're in November. Your program 2021 starts early January. We have 2 weeks essentially of startup, getting going. And the real program hits in at the very end of January, where things get, you need to be really focused and working hard. I think, this may spill over into next year, but I doubt it. I think there's a huge kind of political will to try to get this under control before Christmas. Mm-hmm. And if they do it before Christmas, then they have it under control before New Year and for you. I have immense faith in our government. I have enormous faith in our healthcare system. It is super duper well funded. I maintain the view that Switzerland, in spite of the current experience, is probably the place I would choose to be in the world this year and next year. I don't think the government is reckless in any way. I don't think it'll put its citizens at risk in any way, like we're seeing in some other countries. So I think it's a safe place. So I know that there's lots and lots of things to say about this, and I could go on forever, but I may not address all the questions. So it's important that I shut up at this point. And Marcelli, you can direct me to the other questions that you think I should take and which order I should take them.
Okay, well, certainly Simone is expressing his thanks that you did answer his questions. So thank you very much for doing that. We have one, in a similar vein, we had one from Times. So I hope, Times, that we've answered that one for you as well. If that wasn't answered, by all means, please ask it again. Or ask it differently. Tell us what we didn't answer if that was not satisfactory for you. We have one from Paco who says, will the 2021 class be larger than 90 or 100?
It won't be larger than 100. I assure you of that, Paco. It could be 100, but I don't think it will be 100. Now, it could be 100 if I decide it's 100. Let me be clear. We have enough good applications to have more than 100 people in the class. And if I turned around and said, okay, we're going to open the doors, let people in, then that could happen. But there's a little thing of how do you qualify to get into an MBA program, and how do you satisfy us that these are the right people for the program? I've always said, and I think some of you will definitely have heard me say, it's an awful lot more difficult to fill the 90th seat than the first seat. The first seat, you have all degrees of freedom. And once you make that first choice, you've reduced your degrees of freedom by 1. And so on. And it's a multiplicative problem. It's not a linear problem. So by the time you get to the 90th, you're kind of going like, oof, who is the right person to take that seat, given the other 89 people we have in the room? We have decided, so that's one thing. The second thing is we have a belief in our program. We think it's incredibly important. We think it does an amazing job for society more generally. It provides leadership development experience that's second to none. And therefore, we shouldn't ration it. It's high price because it's high cost. We don't make money on this program, and you'll hear that enough times. But it is it's an intense, very high level experience. We've limited it to 90 people because we can only get 90 people in one room. And that's a legacy of the times when we didn't have spare rooms. Well, right now we have spare rooms. And right now we are forced, it is a requirement that we have social distancing within the rooms. So we have to go to 2 rooms. And it just so happens I can fit 50 in each room. So there are 50 potential spots. The appetite for filling between the 90th and the 100th isn't enormous. It's not, we don't we're not pushing because we're going to need that extra money. It's just, if there's the right person, we'll admit them. I would predict that there will be something between 90 and 100. And I think if there are no dropouts, then it'll be closer to 100. And if there are a few, then it might be closer to 90. I don't know. If there are 90, I'm really happy. If there are 100, I'm really happy. I'm not happy if there's 101, because we then have a problem with space.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Paco. I hope that was satisfactory for you. Seán, we have another question about employment and prospects, this time from Tariq. He says, do you foresee any post-MBA challenges in seeking employment in 2022 due to the delayed economic impacts of Corona rolled on to the next financial year? If so, what's being done in anticipation in career services and company relations?
We're lucky. We've got fantastic company relations, because the nature of the institution is that our business is all about outreach to companies all the time. So our business, 80% of our revenues depend upon relationships that we have with over 100 companies every year, where we're designing programs for them and running programs for them. And these are, the who's who of important companies around the world. And we've got a legacy of many, many years of having done this. So we know the companies reasonably well, and we can help. We have not waited for things could be bad in 2022. We have said from the very start, from February and March, we've said, darn it, we don't know what it's going to be this year in 2021. And our obligation is to the students of the class of 2021. We've got to do everything we can now to help these folks get well placed. And that included putting more resources, so hiring more people in career services. It included an outreach to the alumni community, which yielded 4x the number of alumni willing to kick in and give their time for industry briefings, company briefings, simulated interviews, just background discussions on issues of concern around changing careers, locations, functions. An immense effort. If I could count the number of hours that these guys have put in, it's phenomenal, and it's impressive, and it's a tribute to the tightness of the alumni community. We would normally have about 150 alumni actively engaged in this every year, because we don't need any more, we think. Well, this year we said, we don't know what we need. So let's just turn the tap on and get as many people involved as possible. And then we can more finely tune our advice. If somebody says to me, I'm interested in FMCG, well, fine, but tell me what more about FMCG, and maybe I can get you somebody in the company that you're interested in, or in the function that you're interested in within FMCG, because we just had more people that had put up their hand and said, I'm ready, I'm waiting for your call. And I would say in 99% of cases, those calls have been very satisfactory and really have been positive for us. And what this means, so between our outreach efforts and I suppose our fortuitous focus on industries that haven't been so badly affected, medtech, big tech, consulting are all booming. Pharma, not a bad place to be either. We have these relationships, and many of our students are getting placed in those companies. So for the class of 2021, we have put a lot of effort into preparing them for the situation that we thought they would be faced with, i.e., interviews in this mode. We put a lot of energy and given them space and time to make sure they were well prepared. We put on a lot of effort into consulting to make sure that case preparation was okay. We had case preparation, what they call a boot camp that was offered in the summer. We had a lot of individual sessions with individual companies in the consulting area to put a focus there, and that's paid off. So we have had, 2x the number of interviews that we had, the number of the number of interviews that we have had in 2019. 2x. That is colossal. That I don't know the numbers, but it's, every student has 2 bites of the cherry instead of 1. And of course, there's 90 students, they're getting multiple interviews. Of course, some are, in a tricky situation, and they're what they want to do is very hard. It was always going to be very hard, and we continue to work with them. But what we know is that in addition to the number of companies that say they're interested, the number of interview places they're offering and having, and the number of slots that they're telling us they want to fill, everything is up, up, up. And I'm hearing just today that where we are right now, where we will be at the end of tomorrow, at the end of October, is ahead of where we were last year. And given what we were worried about, that is a heck of an achievement for the class. So, big round of applause to them. I don't think that we need to do a hell of a lot more next year. So let's do more of the same, because the same works. But yeah, we'll do more of it because we know it works. When you tend to have a good year in recruiting, it tends to beget another good year, because recruiters are enthused. If a recruiter's making a lot of offers, it's because they're impressed, and they kind of go back and they talk to their folks and say, there's a lot of great people there. We should do more with that company. And what with IMD, and what they're saying then is, let's get involved earlier in the year. Let's have an information session earlier in the year with our students, with your students, and we're happy to facilitate that.
Yeah, and as I remember Julia was saying, what has been quite amazing about having to move on to Zoom is that the reach has been wider because of less travel, cross-continental travel. Then we've been able to arrange meetings or sessions or panels with much wider audience that we would have been able to normally when we'd have to get somebody from Washington or Brazil in the same panel. Now we can.
I'd like to just further address Tarek's question, because I'm sure it's on other people's minds. He mentions the delayed economic impact. I think there's a couple of things that are there that are very important. Unless you want to work for an SME, a small, not an ME, but a small company, so an established small company, I don't think you've got an issue. I really don't. I think governments are putting more money into the economy than they ever have. They know what's at stake. European governments, certainly Central and Northern European governments, have plenty of money. Southern European countries less so, but they're part of the EU, and it does have plenty of money. So the stimulus will be there, and it will continue. I can tell you, in Switzerland, there's an awful lot of powder that's dry. I don't understand why they're not using it, but it's a wealthy country with a big balance sheet, and it will continue to support the economy. I'm positive of that. So you're going to see more of that. So at a government level, there's going to be stimulus. What we have seen is when the support for unemployment schemes are being withdrawn, there are redundancies for sure. And some of these companies are just, we have to do this to save ourselves, and then they're not able to save themselves. And these tend to be smaller companies. The fundamentals of the economy are okay. The fundamentals of demand curves are okay. People want to buy the same number of cars. They've basically skipped a year. So we've lost that production in the economy, and that's never coming back. But the same people are there, and if they were going to buy that car, if they still have a job, they probably are going to buy that car. They mightn't buy it next year, but they might buy it the year after. So, and I don't mean that that's a good thing. I just mean that companies with big balance sheets who can bridge this demand gap, this period of uncertainty and all this stuff, then I think those are super interesting companies to be with. Why? Because in addition to, weren't they lucky to have a big balance sheet? In addition, they have the benefit of smaller competitors having fallen out. It's a brutal way to think about it, but business is Darwinian, and Schumpeter was right. And here we are with a new economic circumstance. companies with big balance sheets will still be there, I believe. No, none of them that I know. I mean, all our clients are talking about, disappearing. They're in good shape. And I think that they will be in stronger shape because they will have done some tightening of the belt. They will do some rationalization, but they know how to build for the future. They can see the markets. People still want to buy the same, consume the same amount of chocolate, wear the same watches, put on the nice clothes. I mean, people haven't changed. People have been scarred, but they haven't changed.
Okay. Thank you, Tariq. I hope that was satisfactory. I have another one from Nicolas. Seán, thank you for organizing. Very reassuring to witness the agility of IMD in the face of COVID-related challenges. With the decrease in corporate education, do you foresee any impact on IMD budgets, faculty, and or the MBA experience?
Of what? The coronavirus. The impact of what?
I guess he means that with COVID impacting everything, changing everything, will that maybe reduce the IMD budgets or make any changes in the faculty and the MBA experience?
I don't know. I mean, we've never spent more money on the MBA program than we did this year. It's cost us a fortune. It's always tight, but my God, this year we've thrown money at it. Including we've returned some money to students because of some experiences that we were not able to have. The Discovery event, we actually ended up spending a lot of money. We lost a lot of money on cancellations, and if you yank that money out and look at what's left, we were able to return a significant amount of money to individual students. So we haven't looked to profit from this or to cut corners in any way on this. We've done more for our students. I think that'll be the same in 2021 because this program really matters for the institution. And we made a decision about 3 years ago that degree programs were our first priority. That is a huge change actually at IMD. It didn't used to be our first priority. It was always important, but nobody ever called it the first priority. Now we're seeing some proof of this, where our professors are giving their time. Much more of them are involved. They have more time because they're not flying all over the world all the time. And I think actually, from a delivery point of view, from the resources available point of view, I think I believe there will be plenty of resources available. We've been through a budgeting exercise, and I can tell you other departments were told what to do, and we were not. I'm always very, very transparent. I'm transparent with you. I'm transparent with our accounting and finance and planning and our board. And, they want to see this program thrive. Actually, we see it as a strategic opportunity. We see the missteps that other programs have made, in our opinion. And we think that, the reputation that we've earned ourselves last year, or in the course of this year, I should say, for how we have handled this situation is going to be an asset going forward. The asset turns into better applicants, better participants, and better outcomes from the hiring side. And all of that in time enhances a program such as this.
Okay. Thank you. We have another question from Anurag. Just out of curiosity, all the major MBA programs across the world have been reinventing themselves over the last few years. The IMD MBA program is known for its emphasis on leadership development. I'm wondering, how is the program evolving with times, and what initiatives are being taken to increase diversity, not just professional, but individualistic diversity as well of the class?
Yeah. I don't know what you mean by diversity, individualistic diversity. So the reason that we have a two-step admission process, which culminates normally in a one-day assessment, and this year had a version of that, as opposed to an algorithm making the decision that I know the very, very large programs have in place. If you score on this criteria and this criteria and this criteria, you add up the numbers, the top X number of people, it's a cutoff, and they get offers and the others don't. The school doesn't know the first thing about these people. As far as I'm concerned, when you've got a small program, you are going to spend a lot of time with participants. I can tell you, you ask my participants how much time I spend with them. I'm here every day with them, and I do this out of duty and pleasure. I mean, I'm fortunate enough to have a vocation to do this. I have no problem doing this.
This is your second one, even.
No,
you like it so much.
It's not a job. It's not. I don't think it's a chore, right? So we should be doing that. Now, I think so we spend enormous time getting to know individuals, and we are looking for a diverse class. Where we have fallen down historically in diversity is on gender diversity, never on national diversity, never on orientation diversity, sexual orientation diversity. For years, we've had very diverse classes on these on country and on sexual orientation. I have to say, for gender, we've had challenges. Part of that is that there are fewer women in the application demographic pool that we tend to look at. Age 28 to 32 is our sweet spot, if you like. And we have, we've people both sides of that, but that's the sweet spot. And you probably find 2/3 of the applicants of the class comes from that pool. There are fewer women in that pool than in the 26 to 30 pool. There's an overlap, obviously, but it's skewed towards the younger age, and that's fine. How they sorry about that. Can you still hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we put a lot of energy into trying to change and move the needle on gender diversity in the class. If the class closed today, there'd be 1/3 of next year's class would be women, just more than 1/3. But we haven't finished, and that might go up or down. I honestly, I can't tell you. It'll be more than 30%, but will it be 33 or 34, 35? I don't know yet. It depends what happens with the last few seats. That is, we treasure diversity, and we'll do our best for that.
Okay. We had a couple of questions on partners. One of them about partners in electives, and the other one whether there'll be any changes to the partner integration program next year. I can answer that saying partners are always welcome, and have always been welcome in the electives. We put a list out to the professors. We ask them if they are willing to accept partners. Most professors do, and so then it's up to the scheduling. You can choose, like for the MBA, as many electives as you like, as long as they don't clash. And of course, you'll then be treated as one of the participants. You'll have homework to do. You'll be required to participate, and so forth. As far as will anything change next year in the integration program? No, but like Seán said, I'm preparing plan A, I'm preparing plan B, I'm preparing plan C as well. I don't think I'll have 18 versions of the schedule, no. But the idea is certainly that we fulfill the same aims for every year for partners, to get them together. We'll obviously be using Zoom earlier on from November, so that the partners can start building their community and getting that sense of community already before they arrive. And then once they arrive, they'll have the same offerings. And again, the idea is to do it in person. And if that doesn't work out, we'll do a combination of Zoom and in person, and we'll just adapt, like Seán said. Seán, we're close to running out of time. Maybe we can take one or two questions, and then the other ones I can ask people to send them in to our email address, mbainfo@imd.org, and then of course I can answer them, or I can ask Seán to answer them, and I can pass them on to him. So perhaps we can take, let me just see, we've taken quite a bit about employment. So this one from Christian. Thank you, Seán. You mentioned how in 2020 IMD was just reacting versus planning for the MBA class. What have you learned, and what do you think will be improved on the 2021 for the 2021 class with these learnings, and how you mentioned you've planned contingencies?
Yeah. I'm always reluctant to say the first thing that comes into my head because it sounds glib, and I really don't mean it to be glib. But I've got to say this: the most useless tool on any executive's desk this year has been a year planner. I mean, it's pointless. And anyone who tells you anything else is delusional or lying consciously. I don't know what people are thinking of. I said to my boss at some point, I said, it would be great to see 6 months ahead. And then I paused. I said, actually, it would be great to see 6 weeks ahead. And then I thought, even 6 weeks is a long time. But we just don't know what's going to happen. And we have to be ready to respond. So what we have learned, and I think I have to speak institutionally here, is that we have a task force in place, and I think we have been incredibly transparent. So first of all, we have our priorities straight, and they're not changing. And our strategy is straight, and our commitment and promise is really clear. Are you still hearing me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Our commitment and promise is really clear. And the commitment is to give you the best possible learning experience, development experience under these circumstances, i.e. the circumstances with which we are presented. Now, we learned lots. We learned, like society, tracking and tracing is important. So as soon as you have any whisper of an issue, people have to go home. I mean, so, when you show up at the door and your temperature is a little bit high, you go home. So acting fast and knowing who people have been in touch with has been critical. Now, at the very beginning, I don't think everybody really understood the importance of that track and trace solution. Now they do. So a few weekends ago, we had 2 people test positive, and we knew within an hour, we knew who they'd been in touch with over the last few days, who they'd spent meaningful time with over the last few days. We were able to alert them. We were able to check on symptoms. We were able to follow up, get tests done straight away. We can get tests done here very fast. So in your country, it'll probably be different. I mean, some move fast, some are slow, for reasons that don't matter. Here, we did a testing of the entire class recently. We had all of the results back in 9 hours, and the results were 100% negative. And that requires a bit of explaining. And I don't know that I have the right answer. It could be that people are just incredibly resistant, incredibly careful, or incredibly lucky, or they have built up immunity over time. And we just don't know, and I guess it doesn't matter hugely. What matters to us is that when we took this kind of decision to let's just test everybody and make sure we know what we're faced with, so that we can react positively and supportively as appropriate. Let's do that. So number one, I think we learned the importance of that. We also learned the importance of having competent IT staff around at our elbow during sessions. So when we're teaching, we just need to know we've got the support there, and that things, if they go wrong, can get fixed really quickly. And I think the whole institution has been hugely indebted to those amazing people. We've learned the importance of our support staff here in the MBA program, who have gone the extra mile in the operations group in particular, making sure that every day we know who's on campus, every day we know what is going on in class, and we know if this COVID thing is disrupting the psyche, and we know if the professors need support, and we can handle past best practices to those. One learning, and this might come closer to the bone, I suppose, is that, I don't know, we didn't get everything right, not at all. It probably would have been the right decision for the class. They would have hated it, but it probably would have been the right decision for the class to, probably in August, to say, we're not going to have a discovery expedition this year. I think it would be good for the class because and I would say there was probably 4 people hugely engaged on trying to figure out, okay, where do we go next? If we can't go there, where do we go? And we lost time. So I lost a lot of time. One of my directors lost a ton of time. One of my managers lost a ton of time, and someone else lost a ton of time. We could have been doing different things for the students in that time. And I think that was a mistake. I think a quicker decision on that, even though it was negative, and even though it wouldn't have been well received, and I probably would still be getting beaten up over it, I think probably that would have been the right decision. And I can tell you, we will not organize 4 discovery expeditions next year. We'll organize one, and we'll try to execute it. And if we cannot execute it, we will not be doing it. And I think that's just the reality. We will do everything we can to make sure these things happen, but there's no guarantees. I think that's about it. We know we have to have spare professors lined up. I hate to say spare professors, but if I come in contact with somebody tonight who tests positive, I can't come in for 5 days. You need to have somebody else that you can drag into a class immediately and follow a path. So for all of our profs who are delivering a course, they need to be thinking about, and are thinking about, who's going to walk in and take their place if they can't do it themselves. Marcella, I can take another 5 minutes, and there's a couple of questions here that have been kind of bugging me, so I want to make sure that we.
Okay, which one do you want to answer? You have one you want to answer in particular?
Let me just focus here for a second. I think there's an interesting one there about how many folks are asking for deferment. Very few. You got to understand, we have, and I'm sure you do understand, that we have 4 deadlines. 3 of them are absolutely complete, locked and loaded. Everyone knows who's coming. We're not getting requests from those in any kind of numbers that I would worry about or would be unusual. The conditions for deferment are the same. We will deal with everyone separately. In this year in particular, we need to hear what's going on with people. People will say, look, it's just not for me. I'm not ready to come. That's fine. We understand that totally. What that means, though, is there is no reason to believe that you would be the right person for the class of 2022. We have to go through the process again to figure out who are the right 90 or 100 or whatever it is, number of people to be in that class. Every class is separate, every class is unique. And because you remove these degrees of freedom in a kind of a randomized but sequential way, each class is kind of different. So just because you fit it into one doesn't actually mean you'd fit into another one. So it will not have and your fundamental question, Mohit, is will it have a significant impact on 2022 admissions? No. I think what you mean by significant impact is, will my chances be lower because of this? No, not even. No, nothing to worry about there. Okay. New electives added. We ask for new electives every year, so I haven't got a clue. We will put out the call for electives in April, and we will offer them to the students by May, and they're never the same. So yeah, the answer to the simple question is they're the same. Sorry, not they're the same. They will be different as usual. I almost got into a positive negative Donald Trump model just there. So new electives added, the new electives every year. If you're 35 and above, yeah, but you understand that you don't have the same chances of getting into the program as somebody who is between 28 and 32. And that's fine. But we have older people in the class every year. I say older people, older than the average. So if you're 35 coming into the program, that's entirely possible. Young and old make fantastic participants, and that is part of diversity too, after all. Traveling schedule, get here early is the advice to Rohit and anyone else thinking about when do I come to IMD. I would get here before New Year. But I say that, I know that about 40% of the class is here before New Year every year. I don't know why. But this year it makes sense. But otherwise, I'm kind of going like, really? Okay, I would have gone to London or Paris or, you know, somewhere kind of sexy and wonderful. But you know, Lausanne, New Year, okay. And of course, what they're doing is they're saying, let's celebrate together. This is going to be a very interesting year for us. Let's meet one another. And that's fantastic. Just get your quarantine out of the way, get settled. That always makes good sense. So get here early. Does it make sense for us to wait and watch before booking our flight tickets? Wait and watch for what? I'm not sure. It depends. The program will start on the day we said it would start.
Yeah.
I don't know whether it will be in front of the camera or whether it will be in person. I pray that it will be in person. It might not be, but it could be in person the week after. So it's better to be here. And as I said, you can pick your poison. I think Switzerland's a pretty good place to be at this particular time in society.
Okay, can we wrap it up there?
Sure.
And if there are any questions, then by all means write to us, mbainfo@imd.org, or reach out to your regional advisor. If you don't know who they are, they're on the website, and then you can write directly to them and ask your questions. Seán, thank you so much.
You're always shutting me down, Marcella. I don't know. I want you to understand out there that I have so much more to say.
You do, but we are Zoom conscious. There's 1 hour.
That's very good. You're right. And actually, maybe that's another learning from this year. You have to be much more careful about timing. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much there. Thank you all so much for joining us. Don't forget, in a couple of weeks, we'll have another live chat on the 12th of November on the admissions process and the assessment day itself. We've been doing them virtually this year. What will happen next year? Are we prepared? What have we learned? What have we adapted? So by all means, do join us for that. Seán, once again, thank you. Thank you, everyone. Have a lovely evening and a lovely weekend ahead. Bye-bye.